It was Max's voice that split the air. Sharp. Adolescent. Tired of pretending. "You don't own anything here." He said it loud enough that the neighbors probably heard. Loud enough that Julie paused halfway through hanging her birthday banner and glanced over like she wasn't sure whether to laugh or run. I didn't say a word. I stood at the base of the ladder with a strand of string lights in my hands, fingers still tangled in the wires. That voice, that sentence stuck. It had weight. Finality. Not the kind of thing a kid blurts out unless he's been waiting to say it for a long, long time. I didn't yell back. Didn't scold. Didn't tell him to watch his mouth, though God knows I should have. I walked inside. The house was full of noise. Party music from Lauren's playlist echoing through the smart speakers, the blender whirring in the kitchen, the bathroom door slamming upstairs, the smell of cake batter and bleach and fresh-cut strawberries all fighting each other in the air. My boots left wet tracks across the tile. No one noticed. I passed Julie in the living room. She was fussing with the piñata. "Mom said not to hang it too close to the porch light," she mumbled. I didn't answer. She didn't look up. Lauren was in the dining room tying purple ribbons onto folding chairs. Her mouth pinched like she'd bitten into a lemon. She didn't ask what was wrong. She never did. Not when it was about the kids. I went to the hall drawer. Bottom one. Behind the old user manuals and expired coupons. That's where I kept the folder. The one I hoped I'd never have to touch. The one I told myself I kept just in case. Though I knew what that really meant. I took it out, walked back into the kitchen, and laid the documents on the table. One by one. Copy of the mortgage. Title deed with my name and only my name on it. Proof of down payment. Tax returns. Warranty and purchase receipts for the appliances. The furniture. The trampoline Max spent last summer flipping across like I didn't exist. Even the receipt for the damn deck I built with my own hands. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam anything. I just set the papers down in neat, silent rows. Like a case file. Like evidence. Then I pulled the originals from the folder. Slipped them into my duffel bag. I zipped it slow. Precise. Like closing the lid on something sacred that no one else had bothered to understand. Lauren walked past me and reached for a stack of paper plates. She didn't ask what I was doing. She glanced at the table, then away again. Her eyes barely flickered. That told me more than any argument ever could. My name's Jake. I'm 46. And I didn't come into this house looking to be anyone's hero. I just met a woman in a Walmart parking lot when her car wouldn't start. That's all. Lauren had 2 kids in the back seat. A frazzled look on her face, and an empty passenger side. Max was 13 then. Julie was 11. And their real dad? Nowhere in sight. Probably halfway across the state. Dodging child support payments and texting once every other birthday. I stayed. That was my first mistake. I stayed when I should have walked away. Stayed because I thought I saw something worth saving. Stayed because I believed, naively, stupidly, that presence would count for something. That showing up, day after day, would earn me a seat at the table. I didn't just show up. I paid. I worked long hours to cover groceries, clothes, field trips. Took overtime shifts when Max wanted soccer cleats or Julie needed braces. I learned how to fix leaky pipes and unclog the dryer vent. I put up shelves. Painted bedrooms. Built the trampoline they begged for. Bought Julie her first bike. Built it from parts, hand-tightened every bolt. Paid off the used SUV that Max would later drive and then crash into a mailbox with no apology. And through it all, I never asked to be called Dad. Not once. I just wanted something simpler. A nod. A thanks. A seat that wasn't borrowed. What I got instead was silence. Distance. Comparison. Every time their real dad, Dan, showed up, usually once in the spring, once before Christmas, they dropped everything. They'd wait by the door like puppies, grinning, phones in hand, ready to take selfies with the man who forgot to pay for their textbooks. And me? I'd be in the kitchen, watching the windows fog up from the dishes I was scrubbing. They called him Dad, always with a kind of reverence that stung more than it should have. And me? I was just the guy who kept the fridge full and the lights on. The one who waited in the ER for 4 hours when Max broke his leg. The one who drove Julie to violin lessons in the snow because Lauren couldn't get off work. Invisible but necessary. A ghost with a wallet. But ghosts don't own things. Ghosts don't have names on deeds. Ghosts don't belong. So when Max stood there in the backyard, half-grown, full of attitude, and screamed, "You don't own anything here," something in me broke, not snapped, not all at once, just cracked, quietly, like a hairline fracture in a frozen windshield, spidering out in silence. It wasn't the first time, either. There'd been other moments. Moments when Julie asked, "Can Dan take me to the father-daughter dance instead?" Moments when Max left a Father's Day card blank. Moments when Lauren bit her lip and looked the other way as they steamrolled over me, again and again. But this was different, because this wasn't silence. This was declaration. This was truth. And the worst part? They believed it. They really thought I was just passing through. A guest. A tool. A man who blended in with the furniture and would quietly keep paying the bills because that's just what tools do. I thought I could outlast it. I thought I could keep showing up, keep holding on, keep absorbing the disrespect until something gave. But now I see it clearer than ever. What gave was me. That folder had been waiting, sitting in the drawer like a loaded gun. And now the trigger had been pulled. I stood there in the kitchen, the table covered in documents, and thought, they'll come in here eventually. They'll see. They'll read it line by line. Deed, payment, name, all of it mine. Every single one. And when they do, they'll understand. But they won't say anything. They never do. This story won't make the scrapbook. There'll be no pictures of this. No memory of the man who paid for the party but walked out before the candles were lit. No mention of the receipts laid out like gravestones on the kitchen table. They'll take their photos with Dan instead. Post them with captions like, "My real hero," or "The best dad ever." They'll get likes, comments, hearts. But Wi-Fi doesn't run on likes. Groceries don't come from hashtags. And trust? Trust doesn't come back just because you finally noticed the silence I used to fill. I didn't leave that night. I stayed. I grilled the burgers Max liked, medium rare, extra cheese, set out a cooler of drinks on the porch. I watched Julie unwrap her gifts with a squeal and a flash of dimples that used to mean something. I even laughed when Lauren nudged me and said, "You went overboard, as usual." But inside, I was gone already. The fire pit crackled. Teenagers posted selfies under the string lights I'd hung an hour before Max's outburst. Lauren's sister stopped by and called me the world's best stepdad. I smiled, nodded, poured her a soda. I didn't correct her. What would be the point? I was an actor now, just playing out the last scene. 3 days passed before the next strike landed. I was in the garage, changing the oil on the old Tacoma I'd signed over to Julie for her 16th birthday. She'd named it Rusty, and still managed to hit the curb almost every week. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet of the garage, the smell of grease, the ritual of it. It was one of the few places I still felt useful. Then I heard the door swing open. Slam. Boots on concrete. Max. He stood there with his arms crossed, watching like I was a stranger on his lawn. "What are you doing?" he asked. I didn't look up. "Changing the oil," he sneered. "That's not your truck." I paused, hand still on the wrench. "No, it's Julie's. She said you only gave it to her to make Dan look bad." That made me look up. "Is that what she told you?" Max shrugged, like it didn't matter either way. "Doesn't change the facts. You're not the owner. Get out of our lives." I didn't reply. There was no point. He walked over to the toolbox I kept by the wall, clean, labeled drawers, everything in order, and kicked it, hard. Tools spilled across the floor in a clatter of metal and insult. And there she was, Julie, behind him, arms folded, silent, watching like she was there to witness a verdict, not to stop it. I looked from her to Max, then past them to the doorway where Lauren stood. No shock in her face, no anger, just that same tight-lipped indifference I'd come to know too well. Max laughed. Julie smirked. Lauren said nothing. That was the moment. Right there. Not when Max yelled. Not when the tools scattered. But when Lauren, my wife, my partner, stood at the threshold and didn't flinch. She didn't defend me, didn't tell Max to pick up the socket wrenches he'd knocked loose, didn't even say my name. 3 against 1. No ref in the ring. So I packed my bag. Started with the toolbox. Loaded it piece by piece, careful, deliberate. Then the duffel from the closet. Clothes. Documents. The watch Lauren gave me one Christmas and hadn't noticed I'd stopped wearing. My good boots. A half bottle of cologne. I shut off the utilities I'd been paying. Internet. Gas. Water. The Nest thermostat reset with 2 taps of my phone. I canceled the auto payments, insurance, subscriptions, streaming services. Gone. Then I walked through the house. Not angry. Not fast. Just done. I took my tools from the shed. The power drill Max had borrowed but never returned. The ladder. The pressure washer. The smart speaker from the bathroom Lauren once said, changed her mornings forever. I unplugged the filtered coffee machine and wiped it down. Left the kitchen spotless. Then I pulled the checkbook from the drawer where we kept the family finances. Though let's be honest, it had always been my income, my credit, my shoulders. I didn't leave a note. Didn't say goodbye. Just left the copies of the deed and receipts on the table. Exactly where I'd put them days earlier. They'd ignored them then. They wouldn't now. I loaded the truck. Slammed the tailgate once. Then drove. Not to a motel. Not to a friend's couch. To Dan's house. Yeah. Him. Shirtless when he answered the door. Beer in hand. Boxers inside out. Judging by the tag. His place smelled like smoke and neglect. A little like mold, too. I told him they were his now. Max, Julie. Lauren. All of them. His. I handed him the pink bag with Julie's birthday earrings. The backup inhaler Max refused to carry. The last credit card Lauren used for the school trip she never mentioned until the night before. He looked confused. Maybe even amused. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. Just turned and left. 9 days later, he ghosted them again. Of course he did. Because a man like Dan only shows up when there's beer in the fridge and someone else to clean the glass after it breaks. And that's when their lights went out. Literally. The next week, Julie tried to log into her tablet and got a no-connection screen. The Wi-Fi I'd paid for was gone. Max opened the fridge and found it half empty. Because I wasn't there to make grocery runs on Friday night. The next doctor's appointment came and went. No Uber. No copay. Julie missed her piano lesson. Max got kicked off the school's athletic roster. Fees unpaid. And Lauren? She finally called me. 3 times. I didn't pick up. Because silence, when it's earned, is sacred. They had scoffed at the man who paid the mortgage. Now they had to live in a house where the floor creaked louder than the laughter. Where the porch light flickered and no one knew how to fix it. Where the blender didn't work. Where the birthdays were quieter. Because comfort has a cost. And I was the one who paid it. They thought they could shame me into the background and still live off the structure I built. They thought I was just the hammer. Not the hand that held it. But when you throw the hammer out, don't be surprised when nothing gets built. It started with a knock. Not loud. Not desperate. Just hesitant. Like someone afraid of the answer. I didn't move at first. Let it sit there on the other side of the door. Second knock. Softer. Almost apologetic. Then a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Jake. Julie. I opened the door. There she was, hoodie too thin for October, hair clinging wet to her cheeks. She looked smaller than I remembered. She used to barge through this door without thinking. Barefoot. Loud. Always mid-story about something that didn't matter. Now, she looked like she didn't know if she was allowed inside. I just want to know why, she said. I didn't smile. Didn't gesture her in. But I let her step past me. She took in the room. Clean. Sparse. My new place wasn't big. 1-bedroom rental with scuffed floors and mismatched furniture. No family photos. No kid drawings on the fridge. Just peace. She sat on the edge of the armchair like it might spit her back out. I stood. Didn't sit. Didn't make tea. This wasn't a visit. It was a consequence. I looked at her, the girl I'd once taught to ride a bike. The girl I'd carried inside when she fell asleep in the car. The girl who once called me her bonus dad in a school essay she swore no one would read. You thought love was a faucet, I said. Something you could spit into and still expect to run. She didn't respond. She blinked, swallowed. Then she left. Didn't cry, didn't argue. Just left, shoulders hunched against the wind. I didn't follow. A week passed. Then came the letter. No return address. Just my name, scrawled across the envelope like it hurt to write. Inside 3 words. I was wrong. No signature. No plea. Just the truth, plain and small. It was Max's handwriting. I knew it like I knew every scar on my own hands. And yet I didn't respond. Because by then, silence wasn't revenge. It was protection. A kind of mercy I hadn't learned how to give until it was too late. Lauren tried next. An email. Long, carefully worded. The kind of message someone retypes 10 times before sending. She began with the usual. You were right. They always start there, don't they? Like an apology written backward. She wrote about Max's tantrums. Julie's cold shoulder. She admitted what she never had the courage to say aloud. I thought you understood teenage behavior, she said. I thought you were strong enough to take the silence. As if that had been our deal. As if my strength was their excuse to ignore my presence. As if being the adult meant swallowing every slight, every eye roll, every insult, and just smiling through it. She said she missed me. Said the house felt empty. Said the mortgage was hard to cover now. That Dan wasn't answering her calls. And the kids were walking on eggshells. I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. Just let the message sit there in my inbox. A monument to too late clarity. She had let them spit in my face and called it adolescence. Let them erase me and called it growing pains. Let them drain me and called it just how families are. But strength isn't staying where you're disrespected. Strength is knowing when to leave. So I stayed gone. No driveway visits. No holiday texts. No quiet checks slipped under the table. Just gone. And in my absence, the truth arrived. Max didn't register for winter sports. Fees weren't paid. Julie's braces sat half-finished. Payments stopped. The fridge groaned at night now. I knew. I bought the one that came before it. The one they forgot to thank me for. Lauren's car started sputtering again. The insurance renewal got declined. Every line that had run through me, cut. And the lights? They didn't just flicker. They went out. Because I had been the current. The silent hum behind the walls. The force they never saw but always felt. And when that current left, the house got cold. I heard from a neighbor that Max started walking to school again. The truck sat in the driveway with a flat tire, sun-faded, ignored. Julie dropped her piano lessons. The instructor called to confirm her cancellation. Forgot we'd never transferred the number. And Lauren? She listed the house. Didn't tell me. But I found the listing online. 3 bedrooms. 2 baths. Needs a little TLC. Photos showed the deck I'd built, cracked now. The kitchen looked emptier without the espresso machine I'd taken with me. The trampoline was gone. Probably collapsed under a storm they weren't prepared for. I didn't ask why she was selling. I already knew. Because comfort doesn't come cheap. And no one had read the fine print. Now I live on the edge of Spokane. It's quiet out here. Would smoke in the evenings. The lake shimmers before sunset. I built a small workbench in the garage. Started fixing things again. Radios. Old clocks. Furniture left by the roadside. Things people thought were too broken to keep. Sometimes I play the guitar. The old one. Lauren once asked me to sell it. Said it took up too much space. Said no one played it anyway. Now I play it every Sunday morning with the windows open. No one mocks. No one rolls their eyes. No one changes the subject when I speak. Because here, there's no one to pretend I don't exist while eating food I paid for. There's just me. And peace. They wanted their real dad. So I left everything and gave them exactly what they asked for. No noise. No rules. No reminders of the man who built the scaffolding they hung their lives from. And when the whole thing collapses, that's not my problem anymore. because I wasn't just some tenant they could evict when it suited them. I was the wall, the one that held everything up. And when they kicked me out, they learned that even strong houses fall without a backbone. So I ask you, what would you have done? When they said you weren't family? When they told you that you were nothing? When the woman you sacrificed everything for stood in the doorway and said nothing while her children mocked you? Would you have stayed? Or would you have done what I did? Walked out, shut off the current, let them sit in the dark and wonder why it got so cold? Because sometimes, the only way they learn is when you finally go silent. I didn't leave angry. That's what people never understand. Anger is a flash, a flare. It wants to be seen. I left quiet, like a fuse that's burned all the way down, like the click right before the detonation. When they screamed, "You don't own anything here," I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just took them at their word. Ownership isn't always about paperwork. It's about investment, time, effort, silence swallowed, slights endured, bills paid in full with no demand for thanks. And I had owned more than they ever knew. So I printed it all again. Deed, receipts, tax returns, itemized lists of what I bought, what I fixed, what I covered when no one else did. Then I packed the truck, dish by dish, bolt by bolt, all the way down to the coffee machine that had seen more mornings with me than Lauren ever did. I left the copies on the kitchen table. No note, no warning, just the truth printed in black and white. Let them read. Let them understand, too late, that I wasn't some guest, wasn't a placeholder, wasn't a man passing through. I had been the owner of every comfort, every working outlet, every charged device and hot shower and stocked fridge. And now they owned the consequences. I heard the fallout secondhand. A neighbor texted, "Lauren's kids moved in with Dan." Of course they did. She couldn't keep the house without me, couldn't float the mortgage. The furnace gave out. Water bill lapsed. The city came knocking. Dan tried to step up. For about a week. Then he vanished again. Classic Dan. In and out. No follow-through. The man who gave them his last name but not a dime. Max took a part-time job stocking shelves. Julie started babysitting for neighbors who never asked where her mother was. The trampoline rusted in the backyard until someone finally hauled it away. I watched it all happen from a distance. Never intervened. Even when Lauren's email came through at 2:14 a.m. Subject line, "Please, body." I didn't know it had gotten this bad. The mortgage is months behind. Dan's disappeared again. I've applied for help, but it's not enough. Max is barely sleeping. Julie's stopped talking. I know you're angry. I know you feel used. But they're still kids. They didn't mean it. Please, Jake. Just help them get through this part. We'll figure the rest out later. I didn't reply, because this was the later she spoke of. This moment where the silence echoed, where the lights didn't come back on, where comfort wasn't inherited like they assumed, but earned and then lost. They thought I was an ATM that didn't need respect to function. Turns out I had limits, and now they were learning the difference between real and borrowed comfort. They'd post pictures still. That didn't stop. Julie smiling with a new friend's dad at some school event. Max with his arm slung around Dan in one of the 2 times he'd shown up that year. Both of them grinning in a restaurant I knew I'd paid for more than once. Fake smiles. Filtered memories. But Wi-Fi doesn't run on nostalgia. Groceries don't show up because you missed someone too late. Max sent another letter. This one longer. He talked about the job. The stress. Waking up at 4:30 to bus across town because the truck wouldn't start and Dan was too busy to help. He wrote, "I used to think you were too strict, that you didn't get it. But now I see you were the only one who ever actually showed up. I'm sorry. I was a kid. I didn't know." I folded it neatly, filed it under "too late." Julie sent a photo once, of the piano I'd helped her pick. The one she played for hours while I sat in the next room, pretending not to listen. She'd written, "I miss it. I miss you. I didn't know what we had." But here's the thing. They didn't just break my heart. They shattered the contract. The unspoken one. The one that says, If I give you everything, you don't spit in my face. And when you do, there are no second rounds. This isn't a movie. This isn't some clean, redemptive arc where a late apology resets the clock. This is life. And in life, sometimes the ones who fix the roof get tired of sleeping under leaks. Sometimes the men who build the fire stop lighting it for people who only show up to warm their hands. Sometimes the silence becomes sacred. Now, I live quiet. No backtalk. No slammed doors. No cold dinners on plates I paid for. Just the wind outside and the hum of a heater I service myself. My tools. My music. My rules. I don't wonder how they're doing. Because if they're struggling, they earned it. And if they're not, then they didn't need me anyway. People like me, men like me, we're not heroes. We're not saints. We're not monsters either. We're tired. We're the ones who stay too long. Who pay too much. Who eat our pride with our dinners and still come back for seconds. Until we don't. Until the bills come due. And when they do, it's not revenge. It's balance. You don't get to mock the wall and then act surprised when the roof caves in. You don't get to tell the man who feeds you that he's not part of your family, and then ask where the next meal is coming from. I left, and I stayed gone. They had every chance to keep me. What they chose instead was arrogance, contempt, and the blind belief that I would never walk. They were wrong. So now they live in a house full of echo, and I live in peace. They can frame old photos, invent new father figures, pretend I was never there. But the lights won't turn on just because they remember me fondly. The pipes won't fix themselves just because they regret the words they used. And trust? Trust doesn't grow back once you've salted the soil. So I'll ask you, was I cruel? Was I heartless? Or was I simply the first man in their lives who finally said, no, no to being used, no to being dismissed, no to being the backup generator they only noticed when the power failed? Tell me, would you have endured it longer? Would you have stayed, knowing the woman you loved watched it happen and never lifted her voice? Would you have paid for their future while they erased your name from their past? Or would you, like me, shut off the lights, take your silence with you, and let them learn what it really means to live without the one who did?